So, I'm going to start in 6:1. All right, so we know Haman's got the gallows. As all of his blessings that he had one thorn in his side, and it was a Jew. I notice how I said that. A Jew named Mordecai. And the thing about it is, blessings don't matter when there's this generational hatred that turns to bitterness. We see it. We've probably had bitterness about something before. We know how that feels. It's not a good thing because it shifts our focus, okay? On that night, could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Now, the king's chronicles are likely boring, which is why he had them read it to him. I mean, who wants all of the business read to them at night unless they want to go to sleep? I'm pretty sure that's why Scott says, come in here and talk to me when we go to bed. I am not kidding y'all. He has done that. Come talk to me so he can go to sleep. So I'm the equivalent of the Chronicles of the King. All right, so, and it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on King Ahasuerus. Now, usually in Persian culture, if someone did a service like this for the king, it was expected to be openly rewarded very quickly. Very quickly. Because, number one, somebody got something out of it. Number two, it showed loyalty and they could be promoted. And number three, there are so many assassination attempts, during this time period. It's hard to find someone who's loyal because these are two of the king's chamberlains. And I told y'all before, Xerxes is actually going to get assassinated later on by someone that's close to him. Okay, so this shows that even back in Persian times, there was administrative oversight. It just kind of got lost in the weeds, but he did do a service for the king. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. If it was, they would have wrote it in the Chronicles of the king. It's not recorded. And the king said, who's in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai. Don't miss that part. We try to read right over that. So he was mad. He goes home. He's telling his wife and his friends about it, if y'all remember, and they're like, oh, you know what? You're fixing to fall. And he was like, I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to the king. So he arrives at the king's house at night when it's bedtime, and he's just going to hang out and wait until, he can't wait. He can't wait till morning. It's got to be tonight. I've got to get rid of Mordecai. He's going to solve his problem. All right, so he's there to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court, and the king says, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now y'all know, Haman's thinking it's him. He's already been invited to the queen's, what do they call it? I want to say brunch. Yeah. All right. So he's seeing himself as this highly favored person. He's thinking that it's him. Now, Haman thought in his heart, to whom the king delighted to do honor more than myself. Nobody should be honored more than me. You see that pride lifting him up. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear. So let him wear the king's clothes, and a horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. Man, he don't just want the clothes, he wants the crown, he wants the horse. Parade me around. Okay. So at the exact moment Xerxes seeks to honor Mordecai, Haman enters the court to request Mordecai's execution. Court timing. Persian kings held mourning audiences for petition, administrative decision, judicial matters, and noble requests. I guess Haman was not against staying in the outer court until morning because he wanted to be the first in line to get rid of Mordecai. So Haman arrives early, eager to secure Mordecai's death before the second banquet. All right, the timing is perfect. And this is what shows God's providence. All right, if you didn't have the whole story, if you were living in the moment, it would be hard to see God's providence. But we can see it now that we know the entire account. So Haman comes to kill Mordecai. Xerxes wants to honor Mordecai. Haman believes he's about to receive more glory, and God is about to reverse everything. It's literary brilliance, as one author said, but also divine orchestration because he's got his people in place. Only God can do that. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him, thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delighted. So not only does he want the crown, the clothes, and the horse, he wants one of the noble princes to have the leads and parade him around and herald in front of him. Proclaim his glory. This is the good part. What? Does it? Sure. I know somebody who's got a strong billy goat. I learned about that before class. reads the man you need to talk to. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Yeah, as much as he hates Mordecai the Jew, he's the one that's going to have to deliver the news. So royal robes the king has worn, the king's horse with the royal crest, a noble leading the honored man through the city, public proclamation of his greatness. That's going to be the hardest one for Haman, and I'm sure he had a tone. And it was not the one he was supposed to have when proclaiming the greatness of Mordecai. So royal garments were a symbol of favor, royal horses and military and ceremonial possessions. These are the things like the king would use to honor people. Public proclamations to elevate nobles, city parades to display honor. This is all going to happen. Precision of providence. Classify all that. Precision of providence at the exact perfect moment. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him. I think this is hilarious that he's the one who has to do this. Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hastened to his house, mourning and having his head covered. He's putting it off until he literally has to do it, okay? And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all of his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, unto him, if Mordecai be the seed of the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. This is his wife and his friends telling him this. And don't miss out that they call him Mordecai the Jew. They likely knew of the generational hatred between them as well. So the entire city is going to witness Mordecai's elevation, Haman's humiliation. Now here's the thing. For prideful people, humiliation hits different. And I'll say this because this is one thing that I've told my kids. You have to learn how to win, but nobody ever tells you you have to learn how to lose. Now think about that. We don't always teach that. You have to learn how to win with humility. You don't want to get too prideful, but you have to learn how to lose with humility too, to where you can learn something. Because if you don't, you will never be teachable. You have to remain teachable. This is a reversal of destiny. The parade signalizes the king favors Mordecai. Haman's authority is weakened. The Jewish people have royal protection, and the decree's future is uncertain. Everybody in Shushan would have known that Haman is the one who ordered the death of all the Jews, the genocide. And now he's got the one Jew who would not bow to him on horseback, and he's got to herald his glory throughout the streets. Only God can do that. In Persian culture, public humiliation was worse than death. I would say that would be true for Haman. Loss of honor meant loss of power. Shame destroyed political influence. Humiliation signaled divine disfavor. This is Haman's total collapse right here. And it just shows how prideful he is. Zeresh's prophecy. So Zeresh and Haman's advisors tell him, if Mordecai is of Jewish origin, you shall surely fall before him. This is prophetic insight. They recognize divine protection. They sense the reversal, and they foresee Haman's downfall. He can't see it because he's too bitter. He's not going to pull back. He's not going to repent. He's going to just continue forward with his hate. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hastened to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman came into the banquet with Esther the queen, and the king said against unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted unto thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed even to half the kingdom. He said this several times. I'm willing to give you up to half the kingdom. All you got to do is ask. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. This is where she's coming out as like revealing who she is. This is the exact moment she's saying she's Jewish. She's hid it up to this point. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondsmen and bondswomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. So if this was just a mere, okay, they're going to be sold into slavery, she wouldn't have said anything. But again, this is genocide, so now she's come to say something. Then King Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? You can kind of see the anger coming up, like, who's threatening my queen here? Who dares threaten my queen here, okay? And Esther said, the adversary and the enemy is the wicked Haman. She didn't hide. That was very blunt. You can't deny what she said. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. I wonder what he was thinking when she said that she was a Jew. I wonder if he was already thinking, because his wife and his advisors have already told him, you're going to fall. So Esther uses parallelism, personal identification, emotional appeal, and legal clarity. That's been broken down. It's the way that she presents things to the king. Now the king, he's not just he is an ordinary man, but he's not. Certain things are going to, resonate with him that might not resonate with someone else. So my life, my people. She reveals her Jewish identity. She frames the decree as an attack on her personally. Well, if it's just the Jews, he's still going to get money out of it. But now she's a part of it, okay? And legal clarity, she cites the decree's intent to annihilate. is political courage, because Esther accuses a royal official. For a woman to do this at this time, it likely did not happen many times. Okay? Reveals her ethnicity, challenges our irrevocable decree, and she risked her life again by stating this. This is the turning point, now pay attention to this, to an unseen war. I will remind you, are we in a war? We are. That's one of the things that I have to remind the youth. I will tell you this. I was the kid raised in church. I don't ever remember somebody literally pointing out to me, you're already in a spiritual war when you're in adolescence, when you're in your teenage years. It was only when I was in adulthood that I really grasped that. But the war today, and I said this the other night if y'all were watching on Sunday night, World War III is spiritual. It's happening everywhere. It is attacking families. It is attacking youth. Just as we see narcissism, hatred, and bitterness in someone like Haman in the biblical account, can you see that in our world today on a larger scale? Is it growing? It shows you the spiritual war, because we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Now, I will remind you, when we were going over Daniel, when the messenger comes to deliver Daniel the message, he came from fighting who? Prince of Persia. There is demonic forces working in Persia. We know it. What do you think's happening all around? But you can see God at work too, just as you can see the spiritual battle playing here. And we don't always see it. It takes accounts like this in the Bible to kind of wake us up, to recognize the patterns that we see in today, so we can apply it to today. Okay? Esther frames the decree as a violation of imperial justice, a threat to the king's interest, a manipulation of royal authority, and a crime against loyal subjects. It's the opposite of what Haman presented when he was wanting to get this done. Xerxes is going to realize that he signed a decree he did not fully understand. Read the paperwork. You know, read the paperwork, the terms and conditions. You don't know what you're signing up for.
Well, you gotta be careful who you trust, too. You trust him, too. So.
Right. His authority was manipulated. His queen was targeted. His empire was endangered. And this is the moment divine timing converges. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. Now, I have a problem with that. Don't you leave Esther behind. You just left her with the enemy. That's the one thing in this account that kind of just gets me. Don't leave her behind. You're going to go walk in the garden because you're mad and you're leaving the enemy with your queen. Okay. And Haman stood up to make a request for his life to Esther, the queen. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Evil against him? You see how narcissism works? The evil was against him. He wasn't the evil one, although he just plotted the genocide of an entire people group. Evil was against him. It's kind of like, have y'all ever heard the explanation of, well, you pull somebody's hair and when they pull yours back, they cry or you cry victim? You done it first. That's like the definition of narcissism. So, the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Don't take that as a literal bed. These are like the reclining couches. It's just using that term in here. The thing about it is he's kind of fallen before her pleading. So don't get anything like mistaken here of anything untoward like that. So he's fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. So they put a bag over his head. Can't see nothing. I think that's interesting. Why would they cover his face? Just interesting. And Harbana, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, "Behold, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, whom had spoken good for the king, he reminds him," this is the guy you just honored, "standeth in the house of Haman." Then the king said, "Hang him thereon." I can picture that. Hang him on it. He just threatened my queen. Hang him on it. I'm pretty sure it was that tone. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. Then the king held out the golden scepter, and I know we have just a little bit ways to go. I'm going to try to fit it in. Held out the golden scepter to Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, "If it please the king, and I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are all in the king's provinces." So what she's trying to do is she's trying to have that decree reversed. And it can't be. "For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?" She puts them as family. Then King Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, "Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows because he laid his hand upon the Jews." So with Haman being like second in command, kind of like the vizier of Persia, he would have a substantial estate, money, and we're going to see that he's got like a large family as well. That is a huge, huge thing for her to get that. A Jew to get Amalekite property, and they have nothing. Remember that ancient hatred. "Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring, no man reverse." Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, in the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants and the deputies and the rulers of the provinces which are from India to Ethiopia. That's a huge territory. And 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto the people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing and according to their language. It's going to go out in every language. Nobody's going to have an excuse. And he wrote in King Ahasuerus' name and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback and riders on mules and camels and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and the province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil for prey. This is important. He can't reverse it, but he can give them the power to come together and stand and protect themselves. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. So they can only do it this one day. Only this specific day. The copy of the writing for the commandment had's not in there. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel, blue and white, with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. Now he is now pretty much the vizier, second in command. He gets Haman's role in this. He gets the king's ring and can make royal decrees. For the Jews in the city who just had a death sentence, it's huge to have a Jew specifically in this role. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. I'm seeing if I have enough time. And in every province and every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and the decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews. Isn't that odd? Why do you think people of the land became Jews? I think it's because they can see God's providence in this. If they have a God that's for them and can reverse this, I want to be a part of that as well. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put to execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them and hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in the cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all of the rulers and provinces and the lieutenants and deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out through all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Kind of sounds like Joseph when he was in Egypt. He waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto all those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. And Parshandantha and Dalphon and Aspatha, these names are killing me here. And Horatha and Adilaiah and Aridatha and y'all see all the names. The 10 sons of Haman. 10 sons. Now, if Haman had generational hatred, what do you think his sons are going to have? The same. The son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they on the spoil, but on the spoil they laid not their hand. They killed them, but they would not take their property. That's what they wanted to do to the Jews. They wanted to kill them and take their property. Okay? The Jews did not take their property. On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan, the palace, was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted to thee? Or what is thy request further, and it shall be done? The Jews killed their attackers, but do not lay hand on the plunder. That is very important, because this is restraint, but it is also covenantal obedience. It's a command. It mirrors the command when Saul was supposed to go to the Amalekites and kill every man, woman, and child. They were not supposed to plunder them. They remembered that. All right? They're not going to plunder what is from Haman. Okay? Then said the Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according to this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the kings commanded it to be done, and the decree was given in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. That takes care of that generational bitterness, so they can't come back. I'll remind you, they did this in Babylon. They did this all throughout Assyria. They didn't just kill one person. They killed the entire family to stop like rebellious generational hatred. If you remember when Daniel was in the lion's den, the people who accused Daniel, they didn't just throw them in there. It was their entire family into the lion's den. Again, it repeats that they did not lay their hand upon the plunder. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies. They slew their foes, 75,000. But they did not lay their hands on the prey. Not one person. Not one person. They all did this. 75,000 is a lot of people. That would be a lot of plunder. Somebody, you would think, greedy, would come in and be like, well, if you're not going to take it, I will. This is obedience. It was convenient, it was there for the taking, and they did not do it. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same, rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Now this, I'm not going to go through it because I don't have time. This is what's going to be called the Feast of Purim. If you remember, Haman casted lots of pure, P-U-R. Now this feast day is Purim, and it was supposed to be yearly to remind people of God's deliverance here. And they needed that because they're not in their homeland. This is, again, part of the diaspora. They're away from home, and God's still with them, even though they're not in their homeland. All right? So if you ever study Purim, it literally comes from the word like to cast lots of pure, and they changed something ugly and awful into a feast day of remembrance of God's deliverance. Okay, I know I covered a lot. But that takes care of Esther. Y'all get the main idea. So we can move on next week. So any questions before I go? Does that make sense? There's a lot of good stuff